What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Today we are going to be discussing running backs that I think you guys should sell high on if you guys have these running backs. But before we get into it, if you guys could, please go down, give this video a like, give this video a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I will have a subscription right around here, so if you guys do care to subscribe, would mean the world to me. With that out of the way, though, let's hop right into our first running back. When I thought of this sell high video, the first player that came to mind was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the epitome of sell high. The past 3 weeks, Clyde has had 3 touchdowns, but the most amount of opportunities he has seen in this offense is 13. Well, 13 opportunities in this Chiefs offense sounds good. They don't use Clyde Edwards-Helaire as much as we would like. Right now, Jerick McKinnon has 46% of snaps to Clyde Edwards-Helaire's 40. And in the red zone, we've seen a nearly even split of touches, with 5 going to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 4 going to Isaiah Pacheco, and 5 going to Jerick McKinnon. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just lucky that he was the one who ended up with 3 touchdowns. And while yes, you can determine that to Clyde's talent a little bit, this will even out. This is regression worthy. A touchdown a game off an average of 11 opportunities a game is not sustainable, even in this Chiefs offense, especially when you do have Patrick Mahomes, a guy who is a touchdown vulture for everyone, whether that be in the rushing game or passing game. Obviously more so in the passing game, but sometimes as well in the rushing game. And then you have a multitude of receivers he can go to as well, whether it be Juju, whether it be MVS, whether it be Kelsey. He can really go to anyone on a given week in this offense, and that is one of the things that concerns me. I will say Clyde does have a decent floor with his receiving work. He has gotten 3, 4, and 5 targets each of the first 3 weeks, but I think you could sell high on him because the running back landscape right now has been pretty dry. And when you just look at Clyde's box stats, as in like 20 fantasy points, 14 fantasy points, and 12 fantasy points, he looks like a really entertaining option. Somebody you would even be willing to trade a guy like Leonard Fournette for, because Leonard Fournette hasn't produced. A lot of the buy low candidate types, you might even be able to trade, I'd probably honestly Clyde and a piece for a guy like Joe Mixon if you really wanted to. And I think it's just because of the touchdowns. I mean, really, he's just had a ton of touchdowns, but that's not something that's going to be sustainable in the long term. I don't see his red zone carries. I don't see him taking over the red zone carries in this offense because they do clearly like to use Jerick McKinnon so much. And Jerick McKinnon has an overall higher snap count. Clyde only on the field for 40% of snaps again. So I'm a little worried about Clyde. But that's why he is a sell high candidate here. A guy I think you could sell for a lot in fantasy football, but I don't think his production continues at this rate. But anyways, guys, let's move on to our next player here. A guy that might ruffle some feathers, but we got Aaron Jones. So first and foremost, Aaron Jones is very talented. I just want to get that out of the way right now. If you were a workhorse running back in an offense, I would say absolutely you have to keep this guy. Again, one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. But the problem is, he is not in a workhorse offense. Right now, he is currently splitting touches with one of the most talented backup running backs in the league in A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon right now has 54% of the snaps to Aaron Jones' 61%. So it's nearly a 50-50 split. Yes, I know it's over 100%, but that's because they do have them on the field. Both of them on the field at the same time on certain packages. So that's why we do see it over 100%. But if we see a split, a nearly 50-50 split between these two players, I don't think the pie is going to be big enough for these guys to perform on a week-to-week basis. And the reason why I say that is because, first of all, last week, I mean, both these players had 5 points, not anything you're too happy about. But the week previous, Aaron Jones had 30 points. The week before that, A.J. Dillon had 25 points. You're really going to get no consistency from Aaron Jones. And, well, yes, I know he had a bad week this past week, so why is he on a sell high video? But my point is that Aaron Jones will have another boom week. It's just who Aaron Jones is because he's that talented of a running back. You need to sell at that boom week because his production is going to be very hit or miss, and injecting volatility in your team is good sometimes, but when the floor is as low as Aaron Jones's could be, in an offense that ranks right behind the Houston Texans in total points scored for this season with 16 points, I just don't think there's going to be enough to go around. Not only that, but we see A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones practically splitting a 50-50 in the red zone, both of them having 8 touches a week in the red zone, which is just, I mean, that's a lot of touches, yes, but if they're going to be splitting at 50-50, if they're going to be getting down to those end zone trips just as much, if not less than normal, I can't see a path for Aaron Jones to have consistent fantasy success. And again, very, very talented player, don't get me wrong. But I just don't think this offense is going to be able to support 2 running backs. And again, that's why I would rather have the cheaper option in A.J. Dillon. And you could still package Aaron Jones up for a lot, because Aaron Jones is one of the biggest names in fantasy football. I mean, he was going in the late 2nd round. He has such a nice ring to him, and nobody's panicking on Aaron Jones. Nobody's panicking on the Green Bay Packers. So you can go out and trade him, I'm sure, and get some good pieces. Whether you want to break him up and get a nice running back, like a Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette's just a guy I always think of as a buy low. But like a Leonard Fournette and a good wide receiver as well. Let's say Leonard Fournette and like a DK or something, or like a Michael Thomas and a Leonard Fournette. You could probably package that up and get that deal done with a ton of owners. So I would go out and ship him. I do love Aaron Jones, but just for fantasy, I just can't trust him this year. But anyways, let's move on to our next guy in Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary is pretty much in the same exact situation as Clyde. Last week, he had an absolutely monster week, putting up 19 points on only 9 rushes, but he gets 9 receptions and a touchdown, which kind of salvages his week. Devin Singletary is not somebody that you drafted with very, very high hopes for, unless you saw last year's performances and thought this guy is going to be great. But he's so easy to sell. For one, he's in the Bills' offense, arguably the best offense in the league. Well, yes, they had a down week. It's going to be infrequent. I imagine Josh Allen's not going to need to throw the ball 63 times. He's also only 25 years old and pretty much the lead dog in this offense, receiving about 66% of snaps, give or take. So, I mean, he's definitely the guy going forward, but the problem is the Bills don't run the ball. Right now, the Bills have the 5th lowest passing rate in neutral game scripts in the entire NFL. Only behind Washington, New Orleans, Arizona, the Raiders, and the Jets. And realistically, how many of these teams can you think of have successful running backs? I mean, Alvin Kamara has been terrible this year. Antonio Gibson hasn't done much. James Conner's looked awful. The Raiders have Josh Jacobs, who hasn't done anything. And Breece Hall and Michael Carter are splitting work, which basically makes it completely terrible for both of them. So none of these offenses has really had any successful running backs. And I don't think the Bills project to be any different. Yes, Devin Singletary's touches will be more efficient, but we've seen him as a rusher before, and he's not that great. I mean, and this year, even 6 carries for 19 yards, 9 carries for 13 yards. That's pretty much getting nothing done on the ground. The only thing that salvaged his week, again, is this receiving workload. But I don't think this is going to be an every week occurrence. For one, during the offseason, we saw James Cook be drafted, and he's a phenomenal pass-catching running back. But then the Bills also try and bring in J.D. McKissick, who is another pass-catching running back. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. They also try to bring in Chase Edmonds, who's another pass-catching running back. So they clearly do not trust Devin Singletary in this passing down role. Yes, he got a lot of targets in this game because Josh Allen had to check down a ton, and they were losing, so they were throwing the ball literally every single play. But I don't see this continuing. For one, I don't see the Bills going down much for the rest of the season. And they even when they're up, they don't really run the ball to their running backs. And if they do, they're not going to give it to Singletary. They're going to give it to Zach Moss. They're going to give it to James Conner when they're up and doing their usual 40-point games. So I just don't see a role for Devin Singletary to consistently have a good time in his offense. So I would go out and trade him. You could probably package him up for a pretty good running back or wide receiver with the boom week he had. Just really use the hammer in the chip that he is a Bills running back in one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. And I think you can get a deal done. But anyways, that is it for Devin Singletary. Let's move on to our last guy now, in Dameon Pierce. So the last running back I want to talk about again is Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce is a good running back. He looks really good. But I do have a few problems with his overall situation and everything going on around him that make me a little bit scared to own him in the future. And I think you could sell really high on a guy you could sell as the number 1 in his offense. Yes, it is a bad offense, but the number 1 in his offense off a game where you drop 17 fantasy points. So first I want to get into the snap count. Dameon Pierce is basically, according to the snap count, in a 50-50 split with Rex Burkhead. Well, yes, I think this is skewed because in week 1, Rex Burkhead pretty much dominated the whole snap count, and now it's leaning more towards Rex Burkhead. In the last 2 weeks, Rex Burkhead has gotten 62% of the snaps and 59% of the snaps, meaning he is getting more and more heavily utilized as the season goes on. And in the carries, you're seeing the same thing, going from 11 to 15 to 20 carries. But these snap counts mean that Rex Burkhead is still involved. I mean, right now on the season, he's had 16 total targets. That means a lot because that means Dameon Pierce is not going to be utilized in the receiving game. We kind of already knew that going in. But I mean, 4 total targets for Dameon Pierce coming into the season. Again, well, yes, he does have the rushing volume. This is rushing volume on a very bad team that should figure to be in negative game scripts a majority of the time. They did play the Bears this week, and the Bears are somehow just as bad as the Texans. But their schedule this upcoming 6 weeks is a lot harder. I mean, especially the next 5 weeks. They play the Eagles, the Chargers, the Titans, the Raiders. This is just a hard schedule, much harder than playing the Bears. The Bears gave him the best game script he's going to get throughout the season unless they somehow beat a really good team like when they beat the Chargers last year, which I think is going to happen, but very infrequently. So I would go sell on the hype of Dameon Pierce because the hype is absolutely real. I mean, and you get 17 points as a rookie. It's going to be a little bit hard to trade him from your perspective because you're thinking, oh, this guy is a rookie, he's the best. I have Chris Olave in my main league right now, and I think this guy could do no wrong. I mean, he's just absolutely so good. It is hard. That's the human aspect of fantasy football. It is hard to go out and trade these rookies that you think could be really good. But if you can fetch some really, really good talented players for Dameon Pierce, I would absolutely go and do it. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it from me. That is the video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, please go down, leave a like, leave a comment. Again, I'm answering every single fantasy football related comment, whether it be trades, start sits, anything. I'm more than happy to help you guys out. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you do not miss another video. As always, though, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.